Hello, this is Tony and LaBeth with the Mindful Soul Podcast, episode number 4, and we're going to talk about love and connection and validation. And we'd love for you to share this with your friends. I want to do a little bit of something to get us started here. LaBeth, talk to us a little bit. Love and connection. How important is it? Validation. Is it important? Not important?
I think it's really important. I remember whenever I was in grad school, my clinical training director, one of the things that she said was everyone deserves to feel love and deserves to feel safe. And because this is an academic discussion and because I was sitting in a classroom, it kind of threw me off guard because when we normally talk about things that we deserve or entitlement, it's usually in a really negative way. But every human being is entitled to feel love and to feel safe. That does not necessarily mean that every human being does feel love and does feel safe. But we each one of us have a responsibility to kind of help others to feel that.
I think you're right, and if we would just remember that, it would make our day-to-day go a lot smoother. You know, a lot of times Christians live a very confrontational life. Mm-hmm. I think about as discussing something as simple as teaching true doctrine in song. It's very easy to go in and be very factual and make somebody feel as if you think they're stupid. Where if we would just validate them, and I don't know the good way to do it because it's just difficult. Normally, I just try to be as loving as I can and put the facts out there. Mm-hmm. But I try to understand that most people have not thought about it. If they're singing lines in a song that are teaching false doctrine, they're not malicious. They're not trying to lead anybody astray. And if we could just validate that, it makes getting to our desired result easier.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so that's an example that you have.
Yeah, it seems like it makes two sides of a confrontation. It seems like it makes it less oppositional whenever we validate.
Before we ever go into any of the opposition.
Yes.
Just to help somebody feel like what they have to say matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that goes along with being empathetic with others. And I think that, as Christians, treating other people like they're human beings is something that we have to do. And I think a lot of times we forget that in pursuit of the truth, or if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I know I personally am guilty of getting so passionate about the truth that I forget that the person that holds this position, they hold it and it's a part of who they are. So when I attack the error forthrightly and without mercy, as well we must do sometimes, that person is perceiving that I am attacking them.
Well, and then what that does is that starts to close in the barriers, and you're not able to reach them anymore, and that defeats the purpose.
Absolutely. So I guess that gets in. I mean, this has gone way far to the theological side very quickly, but I just come off a week of camp. It was Camp Dakota, and we had a lot of Bible, a lot of good stuff happening. We had 8 people put on Christ in baptism. Yeah, that's if I'm counting right. Mm-hmm. I don't think I lost count. But anyway, what I noticed that these children, they it's like all they want to feel is that they matter. And a lot of those children are not getting that.
I think it's easier to see in kids too because they're so genuine or transparent almost. Mm-hmm. If you're really looking, you can see, it doesn't take much to see like the underlying, the foundation of where a kid is coming from through the way that they act,
I guarantee it.
As we age, it's a little bit harder to distinguish what's underlying someone's behavior and actions towards us, But kids just, it's very transparent with them, I think, a lot of times.
Well, they're not afraid of being vulnerable.
Right.
And
they don't know. I mean, they're just being.
Yeah, and sometimes they should be afraid of being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I know there was one little girl there. You know me, I'm terrible with ages. She was younger than 12, older than 8, maybe. And she was low functioning socially. She had not had a lot of help developing social skills. And of course, I have this thing that I do called the godly hug. And I get it from blessed be God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the God of all mercy, or the Father of all mercies and the God of all comfort. And that word comfort is para, to the side, and then kleo, call. Literally, a godly hug is calling to one side, or God calls us to his side. And for those of you listening on the podcast channel, basically, if you could picture two people standing abreast and one person just puts his arm around the other and draws them closer, that's all it is.
Right.
And it doesn't matter, male, female, young, or old, you can hug somebody this way and it's pure.
Right.
And I developed this in 2015 when I saw these 16, 17-year-old girls hug these pubescent boys with a full-on, full-body, deep hug. And I'm like, maybe we need to clean this up just a little bit. And let me teach you about a godly hug, because that could turn ungodly pretty quick.
Right.
And so I told this girl, I said, we were talking and everything, and I put my arm around her. I said, let me give you my godly hug. And I hugged her. I said, I'm so glad you're here. And she just like deer in the headlights. And it was just, you could tell she was not used to this kind of attention. And but I didn't make a big to-do about it. After I said my piece, I said, we went our separate ways. She went and played, and I did whatever. A couple of days later, she came up to me, and I would see her around the camp, and every time I would see her, I would just acknowledge her presence. And with a smile, I would give her a thumbs up. That's so corny and stupid, a thumbs up. And you would think that kids would like roll their eyes and think, this old, mean-looking fat guy is just dumb. But
you're acknowledging her presence.
Well, that's the thing. I have never gave a kid a thumbs up and a smile and not at least gotten a smile back. Most of the time, they return the thumbs up.
Right.
Even if they laugh about it. And you know what? I don't care if they're laughing at me. I'm pretty sure they are. But that's fine. There's an exchange there, and that there was love, and it built connection. Well, this girl comes up to me after, it's me seeing her around, always acknowledging her presence, give me a thumbs up. She said, you know what? She said, I just don't ever hug anybody. And she didn't say anything. I said, well, I think that's sad. I said, well, I'm going to give you a hug now. And then she leaned into it. She wanted the hug. And I mean, she would always come up and talk to me, and always.
I think with kids too, this is all humanity, okay?
Yes.
But we're talking about kids because you just got back from a youth camp.
Absolutely.
And the thing with kids is, I don't know if grown-ups mean to do this, but I think the adults in their life almost pass them off like they're not valid. They are ignored. They say things that usually incite a negative reaction in the people around, in the adults in their lives, around them, and you know what? Maybe some of them have really great connections with adults, but it's usually few and far between, because they are a marginalized population, and they get grief, for lack of a better word, over things that maybe not always true. And just you like acknowledging her presence is probably really important.
Yeah, and that's what it's so minimal. Just acknowledging the fact that a child is alive. So we get there Sunday, and I've got the I can't remember, it's the 13 and 14-year-old boys, I'm pretty sure it's the 13 to 15, because 16 is the quote-unquote big boys. That's, in fact, you can be 18 and be at this camp.
Oh, and Anthony's already in that cabin.
Anthony's
That's
already,
sad.
yes, Anthony is in that cabin. So he can be in that cabin for another 2 years. Then he has to come back as a junior counselor.
Wow.
Yeah. Which I imagine, as much as Anthony loves camp, he will be coming back as a junior counselor.
Right.
Where was I? Oh yeah. So Sunday night, these kids. I don't know if the director does this on purpose, but I think that in this age group, I get what is considered sometimes the problem children and everything. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this is on purpose or if this works out this way, but every year he comes to me and be like, hey, listen, you got this kid with this issue. And he's not defining these children by their issues. It's just that he's the director, and this is
informative for you.
Yes. So anyway, the Monday he asked me about everything, and I said, oh man, I said, listen, all I did was we rounded everybody up that night before we went to bed. We read some scripture and said a prayer. Then I just started asking them questions, and I gave them a chance to talk, and everybody was able to go around the room and talk and tell a little bit about themselves. And then I would ask questions. And I said, once we got them to talking, it was hard to get them to shut up. I mean, they just dumped on us. It's like, here's somebody that's genuinely interested in who we are and what we do and what we care about. And the stuff that these children were telling me was absolutely awesome. And the one child that probably would have, quote unquote, had the most issues. In fact, there were two that would have had a lot of issues. Those were my two favorite campers. Good kids. They didn't require any special attention. You did need to understand their value system, because they had a little bit of a skewed value system because of their backgrounds, which had some trauma and stuff in it. But other than that, they were awesome. And the director just couldn't believe it. The one kid that he was scared would have so much trouble actually spoke in the morning devotional Thursday morning. And the boy did a good job. And incidentally, he obeyed the gospel during that week at camp.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool.
But anyway, I don't know if this is good material for the Mindful Soul podcast or not.
I think one thing is that you're really excited and you're able to see some of the fruits that are born whenever you pay attention to somebody.
Yes.
And especially to someone who's been deprived of attention.
Right.
I think a lot of times we do have maybe a negative reaction to people whenever they misbehave or they don't act the way that society says they should act or the way that we think they should act. But I think it's really important, as a Christian and our responsibility as a human being, to take a step back and instead of being reactive to them, maybe take a moment to figure out why they are acting in such a way or behaving in such a way. Or just give them the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what, maybe they're just, instead of taking it personally, maybe they're just having a bad day or, whatever. Yeah. And I think that's really big whenever it comes to trying to promote love and safety and connection with others.
Well, that it's so funny that you went right there. Don't take it personally. I cannot explain to you how many times that, we've the director and I have had that conversation. And I'm like, listen, I just don't take it personally. These kids are communicating the only way they know how to communicate. And here's the deal: this is a dated illustration, but used to fur trapping was more widely practiced than it is now. And every once in a while, you would get an animal like a pet animal caught in a foot trap or something, and that animal is not acting like a pet animal. That animal is acting like an animal. And if you go there and you try to take that trap off that animal's foot, it's going to eat you alive. And
it doesn't know that you're trying to save it.
No. And the thing about it is, I have been party to this, and I have seen and went to personally great lengths to get this trap off this animal's foot without having to destroy the animal. And I just wonder why we don't do that with people sometimes. That kid that comes to school that acts
defiant,
non-compliant, defiant,
oppositional.
Yeah, all of those. He might be oppositional in the mornings because he didn't get very much supper last night and he woke up starving, and he didn't get no breakfast at the house either.
Right.
And then I don't know, but whenever I was a kid, the morning breakfast was a sausage and biscuit and a chocolate milk. And that wasn't just a whole lot.
Right.
And he might be hungry. He might be tired. He might have stayed up all night listening to his mom and dad fight. Or he might have been too cold because the electricity was turned off. Or, he might feel self-conscious because he's wearing clothes that he can smell.
It all goes back, everything that you are saying goes back to some basic need that he didn't have. And unfortunately, I don't know if this is something that is new in our society. I don't know if this has been, I don't know about all of that. All I know is what we're dealing with now in our school systems is a huge amount of children not having their basic needs met. And I do think that it goes back to, I can't say this, it's a case-by-case situation, but I think a lot of times it's lack of structure. When we're looking at our communities, we can see the lack of structure in our communities. Oh, and how many times have I said that starts with when we see the breakdown of the family unit, we see the breakdown. It goes both ways. We see the breakdown of the individual, and then we also see the breakdown of our communities and our systems, like our education system and our government system, and all of that, all the way up to the highest levels.
Absolutely.
And so our families are breaking down. And in our school systems, I think the teachers do as much as they possibly can. I want to say that they are in a system that is terribly broken, I think, a lot of times. And I really applaud teachers. I think that they do everything that they can to help these kids. But the fact of the matter is they know at the end of the day, they're going back into a broken environment.
Well, that's the thing. The teachers are not designed to be in a position to help the children.
Right.
The teachers are designed to be in a position to teach the children.
And that's so frustrating because these teachers, their jobs are to educate these children, and these children are lacking basic needs to be educated. And we get on to our teachers for saying, like, oh, how did they get through the 12th grade without math?
You're right.
Well, the reason they got through the 12th grade without math is because the teacher can't provide all of their social emotional well-being in order to get past that to teach them math.
And what I don't understand, if you, I'm going to say something real controversial. If I had a dog that I couldn't feed, the Humane Society would take the dog away from me. If I had a child that I couldn't feed.
I don't know if a lot of times that's what it is, though. At least we're talking about Craighead County now.
That's like a metonymy.
Yes, I get it.
That's one issue to represent the whole.
Right, yeah. And so I think a lot of times it's a structural issue. You see broken families, and you see families that, maybe maybe the kids are living with mom, and maybe it's a single parent household, and maybe that mom is doing everything that she possibly can.
Well, then she's not doing enough if her children aren't being taken care of.
If her children are suffering from social emotional destitution.
I go to the outcome. I mean, if they were dogs, they would be taken away from her. And she shouldn't have had the children.
Yeah. And and then in that situation, that's true. We have to take self-responsibility.
That's the ticket.
Big soapbox here lately is that self-responsibility, but it's needed. But then you get into a whole nother subject whenever you talk about kids being pulled out of homes to put into places where they can possibly get their needs met. I think that we've got that system is broken, because if they do get pulled from their homes, they're not going into an environment where they are getting their needs met. Right. It's just going from one place where they're not getting their needs met to another. Yeah, it is so frustrating.
You're going into a foster care system that pays by the head.
Yeah.
And so you want to take multiple children because, there was a house in, there was a house in Northwest Tennessee. I'll put it to you like that. that would take special needs foster children. I mean, we're talking like wheelchairs and stuff like that, where the state would pay like $1,000 to $1,200 a month.
Sort of like a therapeutic foster home is probably
That's
what
what
that
it should have been.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was just a bunch of rednecks that had a house with an open floor space, and they
Good design.
They kept between 8 to 10 children with special needs, and it was terrible.
Yeah, that sounds sad.
It was terrible.
It sounds really sad. And, so to kind of bring this back to feeling love, well, okay, so we can get really overwhelmed with all of this, right? Because we're saying, okay, so what do we do?
Exactly.
And I'm a fan of breaking it down to the simplest parts, because I cannot change big systems. There's no way. Not one person, an individual, can change big systems. If you think that you can, be my guest, but it's just extremely hard for one individual to change whole entire systems. But what we can do as individuals is when we come into contact with other people, treat them like they're people, which goes back to you saying, be loving and validate. And I think that also that speaks to how we communicate with each other. We were talking about that a little bit last night. Just simple communication skills go a long way.
That's right. I was looking here, according to a 2006 study of the Churches of Christ in Arkansas, 86,362 members and adherents. They only make up about 2.3% of the state's population, but 86,362 members of the Churches of Christ in 2006. Now, let's say that a portion of those are children. Well, let's just cut it. Let's just whack that in half.
Okay.
Let's just take 50% of that. 42,000 members of the Churches of Christ are in Arkansas. I wonder how many children are in foster care
with members of the church
in the state of Arkansas. And I wonder what 42,000 Christians can do to bridge that gap.
Yeah. It's sobering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You could take 10 Christians, 10 adult Christians, and you could support one child. So I don't know. I'm going to stop talking there about that because I'll really.
It gets real heavy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's what this is about, right?
It is.
It's being able to address some heavy topics. So what about just how we communicate with others, though?
Sure. Yeah.
Because we're talking about being responsible, and we're talking about these big, huge issues, and how difficult it is. You might sit there and say, okay, so I understand all of what you're saying. There's these big issues going on. How can one person handle this? And I think that it's boiled down to the way that we communicate with others.
This is true.
So how do you communicate effectively with other people when you are in a situation where you're connecting with somebody? How do you communicate with the other members of your congregation? How do you communicate with those that you work with, and anybody you come in contact with?
Yeah, well, 1 Corinthians 13, the famous chapter of love, you kind of give people the benefit of the doubt when you're communicating with them. Mm-hmm. You understand that not everybody is a malicious force. Not everybody is a malevolent force. Most people are doing the best they can with what they've got and are trying to be good.
Right.
And just assume that position right off the bat.
Now, does that mean that you should be tolerant of their practices?
No, it doesn't mean that at all. In fact, we know that we can't be tolerant of their practices. Jesus wasn't tolerant of the practices of the Pharisees and the scribes whenever he called them out for being hypocrites. Mm-hmm. In fact, though, it's interesting that the scribes and the Pharisees are treated. It sounds weird to say. They are spoken to more harshly as the gospel account goes on. it's kind of like Jesus spent so much time in the world figuring out about the scribes and the Pharisees, and once he had them pegged, he said what needed to be said,
Right.
the way it needed to be said. And Brock and Aaron and I talked about this, and Brock was rather intrigued and surprised by it, and he never thought about it this way. Nicodemus came to Jesus by night and said, Master, good master, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from God, for no man can do these miracles that you do except God be with him. And the reply that Jesus gives is incongruent with the statement that Nicodemus made.
Right.
Jesus said, lest a man be born of water and the Spirit, he shall not enter the kingdom of heaven.
That wasn't an answer to the actual question.
Yes. But Jesus, what we can do the same thing whenever somebody comes to us and says, hey, whatever, what we do. Now, Jesus could miraculously understand the thoughts and intents of this man's heart. We cannot. We've got to do the same thing that Jesus did and answer the question they're really asking. And then how do we do that? By active listening skills, by, hey, Tony, I know that you're a good Bible teacher and you really know the Bible, because you couldn't teach the Bible like that unless you really studied. And I might say, and I wouldn't jump from that to saying, well, unless you repent and be baptized, you will go to hell.
Right.
Because that might be what he's after, but I don't know that. So I talked to him. I said, hey, thank you. Well, what about you? Do you study the Bible? What books of the Bible do you like? What do you think about the Apostle Paul versus the Apostle Peter? You just get them talking. And then by and by, they're going to tell you what they really want to know.
It takes more effort to make those connections than it does just to be passive and say, hey, how was your day? Fine.
Exactly.
It takes a whole lot more effort.
Go
ahead.
Only ask questions to which you really want the answer. I don't like, hey, Tony, how's your day today? You got a couple of hours? Everybody.
There's a time when,
fine.
Yeah, there's a time where it's okay to be like, it's all right. How are you?
Well, here's the thing: if you really want to know how somebody's day's going, then ask. I'm not saying don't ask how somebody's day, but I think too often whenever we conversate, we ask questions we really don't want to know the answer.
It's really hard to help. I think that was one thing that, I was all gung-ho about going to school and getting my license because I wanted to help. And then I think I went through like a little period of time where I was like, I didn't realize helping involved this much effort.
This much personal responsibility.
Right. And so you have to realize like what you're getting into. You have to be willing to help that other person like in a real way, not just not just in a little bit of a way, but really be invested in souls.
I'm with you. I mean, it's personal responsibility. We talk about it on the We Talk Truth podcast all the time. It's the difference between driving by somebody standing on the street corner and wadding up a 20 and throwing it at them, or going up to them and saying, hey, I've got a job of work. I'll pay you $20 for 1 hour and I will feed you. It's different.
Right. And so taking that situation, that person may say, sure, that's great, really great. And they may take you up on that offer.
Yeah.
But they may not. And then that's where it comes into one of those things where you say, all right, I'm not going to take this personally. I'm just going to move on.
That's it.
So like the art of communication works really, really well in congregations where you may, maybe a lot of people have this one person or a couple of people who are really difficult personalities to deal with. This is really where you can make or break a congregation.
Sure.
Or any kind of relationship. Let's just, broaden that out to any relationship. You've got someone who maybe has a difficult personality, and there's a reason why they have that difficult personality. And maybe sometimes it's really difficult to constantly have to make the effort. But I think that they'll soften up if you do it right.
They should. I believe so.
And if they don't, they'll move on. But
yes.
But a lot of times people just need to have that person to make them feel valid.
Yeah. I think about people's personalities, like in the We Talk Truth group, especially folks that come in from time to time and want to want to argue and instead of discuss. Like a guy came in and quoted, first off, he quoted my position on something. He misquoted my position, misrepresented what I was actually teaching, and then argued against what he quoted, like the misconception of what I was teaching. And then at the end, he said, exegesis is the key, implying that I don't exegete scripture. And that's just snarky. That's not, first off, it's a terrible attitude that person that does that will go to hell because of that. It's a terrible attitude. There's no, that's not healthy. It's not a concern for someone else's soul or position or well-being.
And so then how do you respond to someone like that when you know that there's a lot of stuff going on and they're not responding in a healthy way? There's like some communication skills that can really go in there to really bridge that disconnect and maybe perhaps help that person.
Well, so sometimes I respond mirroring their behavior to show them what it looks like.
Right. There's definitely, like, one of these things is like a case-by-case situation. You can't always do it the exact same way.
Yes, like I know something specific about this person. I know that he's been in a couple of other groups where they've had problems with him, and he's kind of cycled out of those, and he's found this one. So
I'm kind of wondering, though, like how to bring this into practical. Like when you do have someone who you have in your life that's very difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
How do you validate them? How do you help them experience that love and safety and kind of help them out in that way and maybe help them bridge that disconnect?
That's a good question. You try to treat them the way you model behavior. Obviously, you treat them the way that you want to be treated. That's the golden rule.
Too, we can think about just going back to like the art of communication. We see always like some memes that float around on the internet that say something like, really listen to someone, don't listen to respond.
Right.
And so giving time to someone to process. Is that better?
Yeah. You keep leaning back away from the mic.
Yeah, because this is uncomfortable to stay up like this.
So lean backwards. Now pull that mic to you.
Is that better?
Yeah, now point it at your mouth.
Is that at my mouth?
Yeah, raise it up a little bit. No, raise the like this.
Oh.
Now Now stop. Now do it like this. There you go. You're about right where you need to be.
Oh, wow, that feels much better.
Yeah. These booms, they move and everything.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know what you want. So there it is. So okay. I'm glad you told me.
All right.
Communication.
That'll work.
Right.
That'll work.
So what were we talking about?
About dealing with people and teaching and having them feel validated when we talk to them.
Yeah.
When they're difficult people. Right.
Yeah. So one of the things, a lot of times people are searching for validation are very difficult to deal with, right?
Yes.
And so maybe giving them a little bit of time, listening to them, instead of listening to react to them or listening to respond to them, giving them a moment to talk. Whenever you do say, I can tell you're feeling frustrated. That's like a really good thing to say too. I know it seems kind of weird, but it's something that we don't normally do. But I think that if we do it, I think the people that we really want, that we have difficulties with, will actually respond to us in a better way.
Yeah.
There was one time whenever I was upset and I was coming in over here to a potluck and you said, "Oh, I can tell you're upset."
Yep.
And just by you saying that, you didn't even have to say anything else. All of my defenses went down. At first I was kind of like, why did he even point this out?
Yep.
But it only took me a second to kind of get back to normal. And it helped me realize how aware, make me more aware of what I was doing.
Absolutely.
And all you did was point out something. That's active listening.
Yes. Yeah, that was active. That was actually active observation. We weren't even talking.
Right.
I just saw the way you came in and you kind of pushed by somebody.
And I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
But I was really kind of hoping that we would get into like some really great practical applications of this. And so I'm thinking about like someone that might be in your life that's extremely difficult to deal with and that maybe causes you some intense emotional distress when you're not with them. Because we all have had that person,
when
right?
I'm not with them?
Yeah, like they've consumed you because they frustrated you so much that they consume your thoughts. And how can you change that? You know?
Well, you can't change them.
No, you can't. But there is a way that you can react better to them that might reduce that.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is just don't take what they do personally. Understand that it's just them. And don't read intent into what they do or say. That's the biggest problem I see with. So I've seen people in the We Talk Truth group. They get on opposite sides of an issue and they argue past each other. None of them ever deal with anything the other one's saying. And
what can you do to change that?
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is, one thing you can do is you can make a contract, even if it's just a one-sided contract. In other words, like if you and I always had this problem communicating, instead of, like, I might not be able to get you as a participant in the contract, so I'm making a contract with myself that I will not respond to your position or your viewpoint until I can articulate your position and your viewpoint, and sometimes better than you can articulate it to yourself. In other words, I've got to repeat your viewpoint and your stance and your position back to you to your satisfaction.
And then the other person's going to say, yeah, you understand. You understand what I'm saying.
Then you offer your dissent.
So that's going to require some questioning.
It's going to require questioning. It's going to require understanding. It's going to require personal involvement. And a lot of times it requires steel manning someone's argument. You know, I mean, I'm taking this from, I guess I'm a male, so I'm aggressive. It's oppositional. So if we're going to be arguing, I'm going to have to offer dissent. It's going to be like a battle. So I can only strike back if I know your position sometimes in a better way than you know yourself. So then I call this steel manning. And instead of straw manning, which is what this guy that come into the We Talk Truth group did, where they misrepresent your argument and boil it down to something that you're not saying and then defeat that. What you do is you steel man that person's argument. And even if I'm discussing faith only salvation, I can steel man the faith only position. And then once I steel man the faith only position and I build the faith only position up and I strengthen it and I articulate it better than my polemic opponent, then I start attacking that argument, the steel man argument, not even the inadequate argument that my opponent brought. And that sometimes helps.
So what about the person who's not in a debate forum? We're talking about love and connection and helping others feel safe and what is our role in that and how we can promote good conversation and good communication skills with somebody else. And I think what you've demonstrated is whenever, like, the end point. Like, we're talking about, like, when you've done everything else possible, you get to that point where you have to be like that.
Yeah.
But what about all that stuff leading up to it?
We got to be genuinely interested in people's lives.
Right. It goes back to desiring to be a helper of soul or a lover of souls, and then to treat other people with love and respect. I don't know. I just feel like maybe we're kind of talking around it. I don't know. Maybe
it's because
we don't have like a really good, clear example.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know who I would cite as an example of someone that's really hard for me to deal with.
Yeah. So what kind of communication skills do you employ then to help people not be so difficult to deal with?
I don't know. I think just ask.
Mm-hmm. I was reminded of an incident. Someone came up to me and said, there's this lady in my congregation that she's a Christian, but she rarely comes because she suffers from intense depression and she's she always uses that as an excuse. And am I doing something wrong?
Nope.
Again? You're looking at the...
Sorry, no.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I'm talking into the mic like I'm supposed to.
You're all good. I'm sorry. Hey, listen, I'm going to say this to you. I'm going to say this to our listeners. I am not firing on all 8 cylinders. I am still functioning at an emotional and a physical deficit. Camp is a wonderful experience.
You're pretty tired.
Yes, I'm tired emotionally, mentally, and physically. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here. I hope I am communicating that. If I am not, well, I profusely apologize. But
I think it's good. Cool. I think it's good. So this lady, she says, how do you deal with someone who doesn't come like they're supposed to, and they blame it on their depression, and they seems like if we just handed her everything that she would be fine. But because we don't want to just hand her everything, what do we do in that situation? And what I understood from her asking that question, this is going to be a good example of like communication with others. Right. So she's coming to me and she's saying, how do I deal with this? Mm-hmm. You know? And so I have to understand, like, what is she communicating? What is it that this person is communicating to me? To me, even though she didn't say this person has an intense desire to help this person who's not coming, right? Mm-hmm. The lady that's come to me and said, what do? I need help figuring out how to handle this situation.
Right.
So I kind of understood her spirit a little bit at that point in time. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
I think it is. But
like, I understood that she had an intense desire and a love for this person to the point that she wanted to help her make better choices for herself, right? And so to me, that's a good thing, right? That's wonderful to have that spirit and to have that concern for somebody else, right?
Right.
I'm just using this as an example of how I communicate with this person. She's telling me what she was telling me, basically what she was after by not saying it.
Right.
You know, like I knew the spirit of her. Okay. And then
she sounded very harsh.
Yeah. But on another hand, she sounded so exasperated.
Yeah.
And to the point where she's like, I don't know what else to do. I have tried everything. What else can I do?
Right.
All right. So I heard that too. I heard that she was intensely concerned about this person and her soul, that she has already given it her all.
Okay.
And she doesn't have a clue what to do. And perhaps the frustration that she was experiencing towards this person was probably coming out in her interaction with her. Don't you think?
I imagine it is, because that would be on a subconscious level.
Right. And she wouldn't know. I mean, yeah. it would just come out. Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
because if I hold something, that's one reason why I'm having a hard time figuring out who, like with communication and stuff, who I have a problem with and everything, because I literally made a vow not to hold anything in anymore. And it's helped me a lot. I mean, I may be gruff in the moment. I may say something that somebody don't like, but I'm not going to keep anything in my gut and percolate. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be out. It's going to be done. It's going to be gone.
Right. Well, and to me, I feel like you can almost communicate anything, even if you're, I feel like you can communicate anything, even those really harsh feelings, if you do it the right way.
Sure.
Do you remember that time we talked about that? Did we talk about that on here?
Communicating harsh feelings?
Yeah. Do you remember me telling you about, I was listening to that podcast of that psychiatrist, and he had that guy that came into his session that he really didn't like. And the reason he didn't really like him is because he'd come in like all stinky and drunk. Like yeah. And he would leave that urine smell like all in his room, and the next several clients would have to smell it. And he thought, I'm going to have to tell this guy the attitude that I have against him, like my attitude towards him. And to me, that's like in a therapeutic situation. So you have like this extra obligation to be transparent, but that should transfer into art.
It
shouldn't be like a therapist quality.
So whenever if you have an issue with somebody, you know, when you sit down and talk to them about it, you don't need to make it their issue.
Right.
Now it may be their issue, but you don't need to make it their issue. So let's say that there's somebody that's drunk all the time and smells like urine, and you don't like them because of that. Set them down and say, listen, I have a problem that I'm dealing with, and it's because I have a bad attitude and I have a negative reaction to the way you present yourself. And I shouldn't but I just wanted to let you know that I'm trying to work through that, and it's because there is an odor about you, and that is it's so difficult.
But to me, like, that goes back to being responsible for yourself,
Yes. Well, it's supported in Scripture, Matthew 18 and Matthew 5. From both perspectives. If you're the guy that smells like urine, or you're the guy that's having to smell the guy that smells like urine, both of you, like the guy that smells like urine, has a responsibility to know he smells like urine and not smell like urine anymore.
Right.
And the guy that is smelling him has a responsibility to say, look, I'm having a bad attitude towards you because you smell like urine.
Right. And you can do that. I mean, people I don't understand why people, I guess, shy away from those things. I guess because it is a hard thing to do. But what happens is just that momentary hardship. I mean, to me, it's like labor,
That's it.
You are laboring through this hard situation, and what is going to happen for the guy that does smell like the urine? He's going to be like, man, I mean, he may not consciously be able to be aware of this, but he's going to say, that guy took enough time. That was a hard thing for this guy to say.
That guy respected me enough
to come to me and tell me that this was the issue.
Really validated his strength as well, because, again, I always go back, a lack of expectation is often expressed in a lack of love is often expressed in a lack of expectations.
Right.
And you just around a guy that smells like urine all the time, you don't love him enough to expect him to bathe. Right.
Right. And it's all in the way that we communicate. That's why we were going back to the art of communication, just being that person that's transparent and open. I'm going to say this, that I recently was talking to a friend who might be listening here. I don't know. And she was like, I feel like you're always doing therapy on me. And I'm like, I'm not doing therapy on you. All I'm doing is just talking. I think it's just part of my personality. And the thing is that a good therapist is going to be able to have that art of communication, constantly working on it. I'm not always great at it, but I do try to be really good at it. And to me, that's whether I'm a therapist or not. I just want to be able to let people know that I feel like they deserve and that they are entitled to love and safety and validation. And so sometimes that may make me come across as really different than the other people that they're around, because all I'm trying to do is just help them feel like they can be connected to me.
That's it.
That has nothing to do with my profession.
No.
Nothing at all to do with my profession. However, I will say that the best therapists are the ones that can do that. Yeah. And so that is something that I instead of focusing on a therapeutic approach that has the best evidence-based outcomes, I'm going to just try to be genuine and transparent with the people that I deal with.
Gotcha.
And so sometimes that might mean that I have to say, you know what, I know you were just talking to me, but I didn't hear what you had to say because I've got a lot going on in my mind. Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah.
And to me, that's hard to do.
I do that all the time, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, because I know I've got all kinds of stuff on my mind, and I'll just look at somebody and say, would you please say that again? I don't give them a reason, but would you please say that again? And it communicates that you're interested in what they actually had to say.
Right.
It doesn't communicate that you weren't paying attention in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
And I think a lot of times we don't want to say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Would you please repeat that? I don't think we want to say that because we think it says that we weren't listening.
Right. Well, it's all masked in some kind of unspoken societal rule that we can't express what's really going on with us or something. Yeah. I don't really know what, that's so abstract, but being genuine and being just open with other people goes so far. I think that a lot of times, if we have negative reactions with others or negative interactions with others, if we're really transparent and open and they still turn us down, I think that's empowering for the person that says, you know what, I tried my best to handle this situation appropriately, and it's their fault that that it didn't work out. And so that's why you can say, well, I had to ban him because I tried every single thing I possibly could.
That's it.
And I mean, there's been people you've had to ban that you're like,
Yeah.
It's really sad that I had to do that,
Yep.
but what else? You can't keep going with them.
And the more you do this, the more you can see certain traits and attributes that are
Genuine or not genuine, maybe?
genuine or not genuine, but also that are, I guess, distributed across all types of people. So it might look to the outsider like, hey, man, he really reacted hastily. Well, no, I've just been doing this a long time.
You know what's there. Right.
Stefan and I talk about this all the time. We know, we can tell. Mm-hmm. And I know that you can't hear tone in text. I hate it when somebody says, well, the tone of that text was really terrible. Like that text has no tone. Tone is an adjective that describes something you hear.
You cannot hear a text message.
A text message has no tone. The only tone it has is the tone to which you ascribe that message.
And if you've whatever, you've done that. We all do that. Yeah. And then we have to take a break and be like, okay, wait, maybe it wasn't meant as harsh as it was.
Yes. And you know what I found? If I read a message, maybe not a message to me, but just a message put out there to the general world, if I read it when I'm having a bad day, it has a worse tone.
Right.
If I read it when I'm all happy, it has a happier tone.
But you know what you can say in those situations? You could say, I think this sounds rude, but I'm not sure. Or I don't know how you would say that, but you might say, like, if you're really curious, you might be able to ask them, like, what do you mean by this? Or, instead of jumping to the conclusion that they're rude.
Yes. I asked a guy the other day, it's like, listen, is this sarcasm? I said, this sounds like sarcasm. If it is, I'm very sorry. If it's not sarcasm, then this comment, sarcastic or not, this comment isn't in keeping with what we do with the group. And the next, and first off, I waited about 48 hours to make that statement. And the next comment from the dude was, yes, it was sarcasm. I'm sorry. My reply, man, that's all right. I understand. Just this is not the way we need to treat people that ask questions in the group.
Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me think too about like people that's come to me and said, I don't know how to handle this situation with my kid, or I don't know how to handle this situation with my spouse. And I'm kind of like, have you gone to them yet?
Yes.
Because you can go to them. If we're having an issue and I go to somebody else and I say, hey, I don't know how to address this with my husband. What do you suggest? Then my suggestion is always going to, or more than likely is going to be like, have you talked to him about it? If they say no, I'm going to say, go let them know you're feeling apprehensive, or you're feeling scared, or you're feeling sad because this has happened, or you're concerned because of this. And then just being able to open up that part of it. It's like the basics of communication right there.
I know. It's always better to talk than it is to not talk.
But, that goes into like that theory that it's a counseling theory that talks about triangulation in family therapy.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to, no relationship is without a triangle. There's always three people involved in a relationship. What we want to do as Christians is to make our relationships be triangled with God, right? Now, that's a very simple version of what I'm trying to get at. But you and me, we have a relationship, and the only other part of that triangle needs to be God.
Yep.
Well, okay, so I take that back, because part of that triangle could be Abigail. Part of that triangle could be Anthony.
But to conceptualize this, especially for our listeners that aren't used to thinking this way, me, you, and God, that's the real big triangle.
Right, that's the big triangle.
Within that triangle, there are little smaller triangles.
Yeah.
And everything. So
yeah, that's better to say it that way. And so that means that, if I'm having trouble with you, then I probably need to either, first of all, I need to take it to God.
Right.
I can pray about it. I can take it to you. Those are the ones that need to be involved in that triangle.
That's it.
Nobody else. I haven't done that yet, then going to an outside source isn't going to help. Going to a marriage and family therapist is great. I think that's awesome. But it is not the first step.
Don't have to be.
It don't need to be the first step. The first step needs to be addressing it with your partner. Yeah. You don't know how to.
You could just be wasting your money.
You probably are wasting your money
if you haven't marriage and family therapist.
Yeah. I'm going to suggest anybody get any kind of family therapy. If you get the right family therapist, you can get a lot of information from them, you know, but it boils down to who are you including in that triangle. If it's not the person you're struggling with and God, then there's too many people in that triangle.
There is. God is always going to keep your best interest in mind.
So you have a problem with somebody at your local congregation, take it to God, take it to them.
Yep, nobody else.
Nobody else needs to be involved in that until another time.
That's it.
You know.
People always reference Matthew 18:15 and following, and that witness, they say, well, the second step is go to that person with a witness. And what they want to do, the witness, they want to inform the witness of everything and then go. That's not a witness.
No, because that's biasing the person.
Yes. If
and gossip.
Yes, if I have a problem with you as a Christian, I go to you, and if you won't hear me, I go get somebody else. But the first time they hear of our problem is going to be when they hear you and I discuss it.
Right.
And then they make, the idea is this witness kind of makes a ruling. Like, you need to. They either
you're like a mediator.
They're either going to look at me and say, "Look, you're asking too much," or they're going to look at you and say, "Well, listen, he's got a point, and you do need to repent of whatever action that you've done or doing." And if it won't hear you, then you go to a group, and then of course it goes all the way to the church.
Yeah,
this is not under the purview of an eldership. This is individual Christians,
right?
And the elders need to be involved for sure, but it does not take an eldership to practice church discipline.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
You know, if we apply these rules to any relationship that we have, there's going to come a time where we're going to come across somebody who doesn't follow these rules.
Right.
In that situation, that relationship's cut off, and I think that the important thing is that you've done everything that you could do.
That's
and to
it.
realize that, you can't take that personally. That's their problem, not yours.
Right.
You know, which I think is the other part of this. I think that going back to the lady who wanted to help this person who was depressed and would never come to church.
Yeah.
There's a boundary there
that
has to be set. You have to say, okay, here is the boundary. I cannot make her do what she doesn't want to do.
Sure enough.
And that's frustrating, and especially if you've put a lot of time and effort into the person. But the fact is that you can't make them do anymore. You can go to them and say, I feel like you're neglecting you could say, I feel like you're neglecting your responsibilities to the church, and I feel like you're using your depression as a crutch.
Sure.
And guess what? They may or may not get mad about that. And if they do, that's not your problem. That's their problem.
Right. And I wish we would just talk to each other like that more.
We really need to. We don't have to be rude.
Nope. Don't have to be unloving. Don't have to be unkind.
No, because, to me, that's very loving, because you're taking the time to express something to somebody else that probably most people aren't going to.
Because the statement implies that there are high expectations. And I'm always going to go back to a lack of love is often expressed in a lack of expectations.
Absolutely.
I love the people around me. I have very high expectations for them. It breaks my heart when they don't live up to those expectations.
But you can't take it personally. It's not your fault. You've already done everything that you could do.
That's right. Well, we've been at this about an hour, and I'm extremely tired.
Yeah.
Listen, hopefully we'll get some folks writing in, give us some topics. Maybe you ask some questions. You got any questions about mental health? Send them in. We would love to. You can message us. You can message us here at the nearchurches.com Facebook page. You can private message Tony Brewer, LaBeth Brewer. If you're not friends with us, you need to make sure maybe post on our timeline that you've sent us a private message, because if you're not friends with us, it will go into a separate mailbox that we won't ever get a notification from.
If you're female, I have a group, Mindful Living, and in parentheses, ladies only is what it says, because I do try to keep that just a female. I used to have some other groups, but I just couldn't. Time constraints kept me from keeping up with it. But
Mindful. You know what we could do? You could make me an admin in that Mindful Living ladies only group. I know it sounds weird.
We could just make a Mindful Soul one.
We could make a Mindful Soul group to discuss.
It might be better.
Yeah, because I was thinking we could go live
in the Mindful
Soul group along with the Near Churches group.
We could do that.
Oh, well, something to think about. Anyway, look for news about that. Listen, appreciate y'all. Love and connection, validation. People really want it.
I think it took us a long time to get started today because you're kind of your gears are turning slow, but we caught up.
Yeah, we got about 25 minutes of a real good podcast.
Right, just skip through the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, maybe 30. Well, listen, appreciate you. Look for this to be uploaded shortly. Share the link. Invite people to be part of the podcast family there at Podbean. And I'm going to work on getting this podcast on some more platforms, such as Apple Podcast and Just Listen Radio. And I appreciate you very much. And if you want to support us and support what we're doing, www.patreon.com/nearchurches. I can't tell you how much love and connection and validation that I've received from the efforts that we're doing online and from all of you who have told me thank you and validated the work. So God bless you. And LaBeth, you got anything?
Nope, I'm good. I just want you to get some rest.
You want them to get some rest or me?
You. All right. Well, all of you.
Yeah, and them. Everybody needs rest.
Everybody needs to take some rest.
That's it. All right. God bless y'all. We'll catch you on the flip side.